Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great session here at the 8th Annual UAGC Early Childhood Conference. And this session, you are going to hear about risky versus hazardous play with Debra Lawrence. She is an amazing presenter. I'm so glad that she's here with us, and you all are in for a real treat. I am going to give her a proper introduction. Debra Lawrence has over 45 years of experience in early care and education. She presents workshops and seminars at the international level, state level, local level, and she has held leadership positions in the Colorado Association for the Early Childhood Education of Young Children, culminating in serving as the organization's president. Debra served for 4 years on the governing board of the NAEYC. She is currently the president of the International Play Association, USA affiliate. Debra is an associate professor in teacher preparation at Delaware County Community College. She holds a master's and a PhD in early childhood education and is a certified play coach. So this is going to be such a great session for you all. Certified trauma, competent professional, and certified pre-K through fourth grade teacher. Debra, thank you so much for being here with us. We're super excited.
Well, I am so excited to be here with you. And after we get started, I'm going to mute my video so that you don't have to see me during this whole time and we can just focus on
Okay,
the presentation.
perfect.
I
Okay.
do have on makeup, just so everyone knows, but I'm old. So here we go.
Next slide. All right. In the spirit of transparency, we want you to take a brief moment to take a peek at this disclaimer. We have some information we'd like you to read. And by taking a few moments, you empower yourself with important information regarding the boundaries of our knowledge sharing environment. And on the next slide, we also have a disclaimer we'd like you just to take a peek at, and then together we're going to embark upon some exciting topics in ECE. And Dr. Lawrence, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so very much, Tisha. So let me go in and figure out how to get my face off this screen for you so that you don't have to look at me. And then we'll get started. Okay. So now I'm finding you know what? I may not be able to get rid of the video. Can you see it, Tisha?
Your video's off.
Okay, but can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Okay, here we go. So, when I'm working with students or when I'm working in a workshop session, people often, when we begin this session, and they go, "Oh, risky play! Oh my goodness!" So they're very, very apprehensive about risky play, primarily because they don't understand the importance of risky play because they've never done it because they've been afraid to. And so today we're really going to talk about the difference between what a risk is and why it's important for children's development, as well as what a hazard is, which is where you need to be very observant to make sure that children aren't exposed to hazards. So as we go through this session, I'm going to ask you some questions and pause for just a couple of seconds for you to reflect. But I want you to just, sit back and listen. And I'm sure if you have follow-up questions, you'll be able to find me at some point in time. I think I've given you my email. So how do we define risk versus hazard? So risk is a challenge or an uncertainty within the environment that a child can recognize and learn to manage by choosing to encounter them while determining their own limits. And we're going to talk about why that's so important in a little bit, why it's so important for development. A hazard, play scholars and activists define a hazard as a danger in the environment that could seriously injure or endanger a child and is beyond the child's capacity to recognize. So as an educator, a play worker, a teacher, whatever your title, a parent, whatever your title, your job is to do a risk hazard analysis, right? So is it a risk, and does it have more benefit as a risk than it does as a hazard? And you're not going to have any hazards in your environment because your eagle eyes are going to be focused on searching for things that could seriously injure or endanger a child. So here's a couple of examples. I'm sure many of you climb trees, and if you didn't, you should go out and climb one. The height of the tree climbed. So when a child sees this big tree and they say, I want to climb that, which is an internal sort of drive for children, they're looking at the tree, and the risk is, can they manage it? By how high is this tree? Can I get there? And then how far do I climb? A hazard would be an unidentified rotted tree branch that the child may not have seen or is able to identify. So you would, as an educator, a facilitator, a teacher, a parent, say, oh, I see you're climbing that tree. I just want to point out to you that there's this tree branch that wouldn't hold your weight as you're climbing. So do you see where it is? And you're pointing it out. That's that's the difference between a risk and a hazard. You're letting them expand their sort of risk ability, but you're avoiding those hazards that could really hurt them. So in any play space, I'm sorry, I keep doing this because I'm trying to move the PowerPoint where I can actually read it. In any play space, your job is to manage those hazards. So if I'm in a play space and I'm working with children and children are running on the playground, oh, please let them run, right? Where else are they going to run? If you're in an early care and education facility or on a primary school playground, they need to be able to run. But your job is to manage those hazards that may be present and allow children to take some risks, which running is really important for them. And so Rachel Carson talks to us about these risk benefits analysis tips. It's more important to pave the way for a child to want to know than to put him on a diet of facts that he's not yet ready to assimilate. So I want you to think about that for a minute. Rusty Keeler tells us we want to say yes more. And Rusty has this popular new book called Adventures in Risky Play. What is your yes? Children will push the limits. We see it as dangerous, but they're really pushing the limits because it's an internal drive of their bodies to explore and discover. But in split seconds, something that may be making you hyperventilate, you can scan the situation and make a decision whether to allow the play or whether to stop it if there's a hazard present. Even as super supporters of play, we do that, and we should be doing that. But the issue is sort of our fear. And maybe you fell out of a tree when you were little. So if you fell out of a tree when you're little, then you're seeing trees as a hazard. And so you have to sort of step back and see if there's anything hazardous in the situation versus the child taking a risk. So how do we make those decisions? What do you need to take into consideration? And what inner guidance are you listening to? And is it something that will prevent a child from being able to experience, explore, and discover? So sometimes we have to sort of define the difference between an adverse situation and an averse situation. So those of you who fell out of a tree may have a strong disliking or be opposed to children climbing a tree because you're averse to climbing a tree. Adverse effect or a danger that might be present is a negative or harmful effect that could take place. And so adverse is a hazard. Averse is your own sort of internal experiences that may be driving you to stop a child from taking a risk. And it not just climbing a tree, it could be jumping off a piece of playground equipment. It could be riding a tricycle in the gravel. It could be, so many things. It could be anything that a child is doing where you may have had this strong dislike or be opposed to, but that's your stuff, not the child's stuff. So you need to kind of reflect on that for a little bit. So I know many of you did risky play experiences when you were a child. I know you did. And so maybe it was riding your bicycle without your hands on the handlebars down the middle of the street. That was one of mine. Maybe I grew up in South Texas and I played all the time. So one of the things I did, which was fascinating to me in Texas weather, was to go up underneath the overpass of the highway, the freeway, and hear all the cars go clunk, 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 and all the 18-wheelers go clunk, clunk, clunk. And I was way up at the very top of that overpass underneath it. Sometimes it was climbing the pecan trees in the backyard, and I would go high, high, high. Sometimes it was riding my horse with my mom having no clue where I was, and being gone for hours. So you did something risky. And think about the joy, first, sort of maybe it's kind of like riding a roller coaster for the first time, right? You're like, should I try this? I hear lots of people screaming. But you still go, right? That's a risk that you took. And so children need to have those internal feelings to determine whether they think their body is ready for this risk. So I want you to be thinking about those risky things that you did as we move through. So there are many, and encourageplay.com has this downloadable for you for free. And I use this in my courses to help students understand and remember their play memories, right? So is it symbolic play? Did you use objects or actions to represent other objects or actions, right? So, one of the things that when I was teaching, one of the things that children used often was a banana to be a gun. Well, that's symbolic play. Rough and tumble play, we seem, especially if you are, maybe you did rough and tumble play when you were younger and you enjoyed it, but other people see it as dangerous, right? So, but rough and tumble play is an important part of play. It's an important type of play. It's where you can learn to listen to the other persons, to read nonverbal cues, to have someone there that can coach you and say you have to ask permission before you participate in rough and tumble play. One of the participants in Porch Play Chats, which I'll tell you about in a little bit, has an entire, I think he has 3 Porch Play Chats on rough and tumble play and how he as a teacher honors children's need for rough and tumble play in the classroom by having a spot in the back of the classroom with like a gym mat, where when children say, we want to go rough and tumble, he'll say, okay, do you have permission from the other person? So it's this wonderful learning process. And he is there to facilitate it and to help children communicate when they're done with rough and tumble play. All of us played house, right? So all of us did sociodramatic play, whether it was a pirate house or whether it was a schoolhouse where you played to be the teacher, or whether it was something in housekeeping where you were imitating what you see happen at home. And creative play is when children are allowed to explore and try out new ideas and use their imagination. So this is like process art, where there is no product at the end. We are not wanting them to do a handprint turkey at Thanksgiving. We're wanting children to explore the materials that are available and to create with it. Sometimes they're reenacting a story, some that you've been reading over and over to them. Sometimes they're pretending something that they've seen at home. They're using their imagination. Sometimes they're pretending to be a mom or a dad and rocking a baby. Social play is any time there's a social situation where it's expected that everyone will follow the set rules like during a game. And so this is really hard for preschoolers. But as you get older, when you were on the playground playing Red Rover, let so and so come over, or whether you were playing hide and seek, there were rules that were around that social play. And, sometimes when you were out on your own with the kids down the street, you were making your own rules about the games that you were coming up with to play. Communication play is when, and this is like 8 and 9-year-olds, they crack me up when they say, I have a joke, right? Or I have a riddle. And so they're playing with words, they're acting something out. Dramatic play, of course, is again where we assign roles. So this is the executive function part of the highest form of play, when children are using their prefrontal cortex to assign roles. And they start doing this between 3 and 5, depending on how much practice they've had, where I'm the mommy, you're the baby, you're the daddy, you're the doggy, right? And so they're assigning roles and everybody is acting them out based on that role or the scenario that they've developed. Locomotor play is, when we're chasing and hiding and seeking and tree climbing. Imaginative play is those conventional rules which govern the physical world, but don't apply in imaginative play. Like, I'm a bee, you have to have wings. So where are your wings? You have to pretend you have wings. Exploratory play is when they use those senses to touch, taste, smell, hear, see, whatever it is around texture and the functions of how things work around them. Fantasy play, I don't know how many of you had an invisible person when you were growing up, but it's when they use their imagination and they get to play out things that are unlikely to occur. We would, always do a transportation unit that lasted about a month. And because kids were going, it was almost summer, and so kids were going to go on planes. So they were saying, oh, we're really interested. We're going to go on an airplane. And I said, well, would you like to learn about what happens when you're on an airplane? And they were, oh yes, we want to play that. And so we would line up the chairs. Someone would take the tickets. They would have pretend luggage they would give. Someone would be a flight attendant on the plane and asking them what their order is, what they would like to drink, and serving them. It was hysterical. But that is that wonderful fantasy play that is going to be related to something they're going to be doing maybe in the near future. Deep play is when a child is immersed and they're encountering risky experiences and conquering their fears, like you did when you finally got on that roller coaster, right? So maybe it's a fear of heights. Maybe it's a fear of snakes, which would be me. Maybe it's a fear of bugs or insects, but they're conquering that fear because they took a risk. But it also has to be something that the child wants to do. It can't be something that is forced on them to try to get them to conquer a fear. Mastery play is when they have control of physical and affective ingredients in the environment. Object play is when they use some object or some sequence of objects or manipulatives even, and movements. Role play is when they're exploring ways of being, although not normally of an immense nature. So I'm going to play a role as a character in this book. I'm going to play the role of someone I saw doing acrobats at the circus. And I think the one that is, all of these are really important, but the one that is really important is the recapitulative play. I can never say that word. But it allows children to explore their ancestry, their culture, their history as a family. And, we do that, I hope, a lot in early care and education classrooms, where you might be talking about pets in the home, and children have different pets, or some children don't have any pets. It could be the food that they eat. And so they're able to see the similarities and differences with their peers and accept them readily. because they're exploring and learning more about their own history and culture as well as those of other people. And so as you're reflecting on those types of play, what skills did you gain from doing these things? What types of play are you currently incorporating into your program? And so when we think about play and time for play, it can't be, okay, I'm going to set out these 4 centers and you're going to rotate through every 15 minutes. That's not play. Play is child initiated, child led, freedom to choose where they're playing, freedom to choose who they're playing with, freedom to stay as long or as short as they choose to stay. And so when we're talking about play, we're talking about blocks of time. When I started off the year, we had 2.5 hours of open child initiated play in the beginning of the day when children were arriving, so 6:30 to 8:30 or 9. Then and that's where they had breakfast if they chose to when they were hungry, because again, that helps them regulate their bodies to figure out, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, it's time for me to go to the bathroom. They need they need to learn those signals of their body. But when we take them all to the bathroom at the same time, that prevents them from doing that. When we tell them it's time to eat, that prevents them to doing that. So as much as you can, we need to provide that opportunity for them to choose to listen to their body and to choose when they're hungry. And, oh, I think it's time for breakfast. I need to go eat my breakfast now when breakfast is available. We even had snack as a center. So because, some children would get there at 8:30 and had just had breakfast. And some children would have been there at 6:30 and had breakfast, but were ready for food again. So, we have to give children those opportunities. But I bet during the day, so 6:30 to 8:30-ish, I'm going to say those 2 hours based on when children arrived. And then circle was 15 minutes and not required. Children just keep playing. If they didn't want to come to circle, if I wasn't good enough that day, they didn't come. And then they had free play again. Notice we didn't clean up once because you're disrupting children's play when they have to clean up. And we did that till about 11. Then we went outside for an hour. And during those large blocks of time, there was a teacher facilitated activity that we would assess. So it was some developmental activity, a math activity, a language activity, a science activity, a cooking activity, something that was in there. And but it was a choice when children came. They weren't required to come. We did our best not to disrupt their play. So when I talk about play, that's what I'm talking about. In the afternoon, after lunch and nap, was pretty much the exact same schedule. We went outside again for an hour. Snack was a choice. And then the rest of the time was free play. And if everybody had finished the activity in the morning, we had another one for the afternoon that was a choice. So I want you to think about the structure that you're considering in the day and how much child-initiated play is available where no one is requiring them to do something. So on this page, you have 3 images. The first one is a child climbing a rope ladder to get up to a piece of climbing equipment. In the middle, children are balancing on various sizes of rocks. In the top right one, children are sitting, exploring natural materials, pine cones and straw and all sorts of things. One of them has a stick and they're just exploring the nature that is around them. And in the bottom one, which is different than the middle one where they're climbing on all different kinds of rocks, the bottom one has a path of rocks where children are moving from one rock to another. That is risky play. They are having to do things that they may not have ever been exposed to before, and they're learning all of these skills. But, if they were to fall off the rocks on the right. They're falling 12 inches and they're falling on grass. So it's not hazardous, right? There's nothing hazardous about any of these three images. And so you have to say to yourself, is this symbolic play? Is it rough and tumble play? Is it socio-dramatic play, creative play, social play, communication play, dramatic play, locomotor play, imaginative play, exploratory play, fantasy, deep play, mastery, object, role play, or recapitulative play, which I can never say. So, one of the things that I always talk to people about is you should have these definitions of each ones of these types of 16 plays. And in your reflection of the day, you should list or identify how many of these you did so that you can be aware of the ones that you're missing and incorporate opportunities for children to do that the next day. So lots of good things about those 16 types of play and how they should be used in a classroom. And so when you were playing, and I do this a lot with my college students, we go out and play for an hour and then we come in. And so they're doing all sorts of things. Sometimes we're doing musical chairs because they want to do musical chairs. It's their choice. We always do the parachute, and that's the most fun thing that they love to do. We have sidewalk chalk, and we have paint, and we have jacks, and we have Chinese jump ropes, and we have real jump ropes so that they can do double dutch if they choose to. And so all of these things are available, and they can play hide and seek, they can whatever they want. And these are, just so you know, 16 to 60-year-olds. So in my class in a community college, you have a wide range of ages. So when we come back in after that hour of being outside, I put up on the board, what social skills did you use? What emotional skills did you use? What cognitive skills did you use? What language skills did you use? What fine motor skills did you use? What large motor skills did you use? And they're able to fill an entire whiteboard with things that they accomplished. And then we leave that up. And the next time we get together, they go into the pre-K standards, because this is a pre-K course when we do this. They go into the pre-K standards in our state, and they find all the standards that they met outside based on that hour of being able to choose what they wanted to do. So another way for you to assess what opportunities are you providing for children to do these things without adult interference. And so when you think about what you're currently doing to incorporate more risk into your program, sometimes people say absolutely nothing because we're fearful someone's going to get hurt. Well, here's the piece that I want to stress. In this picture, there's a child climbing a rock wall and a climbing wall with all these little handles. When we don't allow children to do this, they do not know where their body is in space. And remember, I said that risk is like an internal drive. They're always wanting to push the boundaries. If we don't let them do this, then as they get older, if we've prevented them from taking risk, then as they get older, not only are they not going to know where their body is in space, they won't have that body awareness. They'll take risks that are more dangerous because they need that risk. Risk is part of development. And so we think we're, protecting them. But what we're really doing when we don't allow them to take risks that are not hazards is that we're preventing them from learning about their body, learning what is a limitation of their body, learning where their body fits in the world around them. And so I really want you to be thinking about what we're preventing from developing versus the hazards or risks that you see in allowing children to do it. There's an example a principal gave, and then we're going to get to what the World Economic Forum says about play and Stuart Brown. one of the porch play chats that is through IPA USA is one on someone who was a principal in a public school, and they had a big piece of playground equipment outside, and the parent board said, we need that really soft cushiony material underneath that big piece of playground equipment. And she said the issue with that, and there's research that proves this, that putting that squishy material underneath the playground structures make children feel safer doing things that they wouldn't do normally. But if there is, in fact, she said it was so frustrating to her because she had to do it because they told her she had to. For 12 years, that playground equipment had been on the playground and no one had broken an arm or a leg or hurt themselves seriously, other than, a scrape on their knee or something. Within 6 months of the cushioning material being underneath the playground equipment, she had 3 broken bones on the playground. That's a huge difference between 12 years of no harmful accidents and within a short period of time having 3 broken bones. And it's because the teachers will say, oh, you can jump, it's safe. Or children would say, well, I was told it's safe, so I'm going to jump. And maybe their bodies weren't quite ready for that yet. And so we really have to think about what we're doing and what is going to benefit development and what might harm development. So the World Economic Forum is, of course, has advocacy for play. And they are always, and this is the play I described to you earlier, right? So it's important. Play develops the foundations required for future learning and development. It is the prerequisite of all future learning, especially for very young children, that birth all the way through the time when they go to kindergarten and even beyond up to the 8th grade. And, they encourage us to say, really, we've got to step back and let kids be kids again. This fast changing world that includes this growth of technologies, which I fear is interfering with children's ability to play, machine learning, artificial intelligence, means that children are entering their primary school and they will be working in jobs that don't yet exist. So all this piece about, oh, we have to catch them up, oh, we have to get them ready. You can't get them ready for something that doesn't yet exist, but you can give them the prerequisites that they need, those foundations of learning, by letting them play. So this means that we need to rethink and evolve our education systems, our on-the-job training programs, and our evaluation processes, so that the children of tomorrow are poised for what the future may hold. They have the skills they need. They have the social skills. They have the physical skills. They have the language skills. They have the emotional skills to regulate that they're going to need in the future. And so the importance of the skills that play promotes in the face of our changing world has never been higher. When children play, for instance, they practice original thinking, which is one of the main cognitive processes in creativity. Stuart Brown says that play is an activity that is fun to do and pleasurable. So when we think about construction play in early childhood, when children are building with blocks and building taller than they are, right? You're going to be there to make sure that they are handling that well, but it correlates to the development of their spatial and visualization skills, which are strongly connected to later mathematic capabilities and problem-solving skills in later life. So play, if it's done the right way and teachers are not directing play, children are able to find where they are in their learning, explore their own interests, not the interests of the teacher, and build those skills that they need, that exploration and discovery. And we're going to talk about what Bruce Perry says we need in our playful environment. So the American Academy of Pediatrics found that outdoor unstructured play is as important as reading or math. And they identify 3 overarching benefits to a recess break during school, because since, even before COVID, public schools were taking out recess because they needed to get those test scores up because of the original No Child Behind and then Every Child Succeeds Act. And so the American Academy of Pediatrics says really children need a break from academic or cognitive learning so that their brain can refocus when they come back inside. So they also need that recess to build social emotional connections and of course to strengthen their physical body. You know, we don't have children in the world who are able to play without restrictions, who are obese or who might have anxiety or depression issues. Is when children don't play that and aren't allowed to have these breaks that it is harming their development. So schools, the American Academy of Pediatrics says to take advantage of recess as an opportunity to help children reach the recommended 60 days of physical activity every day. And that does not include PE. PE is different because PE is adult directed, right? The teacher is telling you what to do. And so then another reason why play is so important is Stuart Brown and then later Peter Gray, you'll hear from, talk about the dangers of play deprivation, which is what they have found in their research is play deprivation is a leading indicator for mass murder. Oh my. So Stuart Brown tells us all of the mass murders from Whitman at University of Texas who was not ostensibly mentally ill, and he's the person who went to the tower at University of Texas and just opened fire on people who were walking below through Newtown, where there were these horrors of school shootings, right? To the present horrors at Isla Vista and the UCSB campus seem to have one common theme among other factors. At first glance, it might seem irrelevant, but the theme is major play deprivation and the additional experiences, so this is what's important, of feeling powerless, feeling humiliation, either imagined or real, practice with weaponry, and a deep sense of vengeance. They're mad, either imagined or real. So Stuart Brown goes on, he's a clinical psychologist. He goes on and says, the signs of potentially violent, potentially antisocial, and depressive outpourings were evident in these people who committed mass murder from preschool on, and were manifested in the absence or aberrance of normal give and take play behaviors. And none of those that he's personally studied was authentic play remediation provided by professionals within those people's environments. And so there are, Stuart Brown has a great YouTube video about play that I show to all my classes where he really talks about this in more detail. And so I want us to think about another piece of risky play. So Ellen Sandsetter, who is back in 2020, she is referenced everywhere, said that risky play includes 6 major things. And so I want you to think back to your childhood. Great heights, rapid speeds, dangerous tools, dangerous elements, rough and tumble play, and disappearing and getting lost. So, great heights for me was climbing up the huge pecan trees in my backyard. Rapid speeds was riding my horse without a saddle as fast as he would go. Dangerous tools were using knives to whittle when I was younger. Dangerous elements were when we built bonfires or had fire pits. in Texas. Rough and tumble play is when I played with my brothers. And disappearing and getting lost is when, remember when you went shopping with your mom or dad and you disappeared in the clothes racks? That's disappearing or getting lost. And so these are the categories of risky play that, again, we need to give children the benefit of experiencing. If you are in a forest school or in a nature-based program, whittling is part of every day. Children whittle with knives. They are taught how to hold their stick that they're whittling. They are taught how to whittle away from their body. All of those things are taught to avoid the hazard of whittling. And they have to be like 2 arms away from the person next to them to make sure everybody's safe. So these are, I just want to see if I can, some of these will have videos. So I was fortunate enough to go to China for 2 summers in 2013 and 2015 and work with Chinese kindergarten teachers and directors. And that kindergarten in China is 3 to 5-year-olds. And so this is one of the playgrounds in Dalian, China, which is right on the coast. And so they have this cute little, I hope the video will show in a few minutes, but they have this cute little sort of steps that are on ropes. And that's the one on the left where children put their foot on the step and they can hold on to the rails that are, are right there for them. But the pieces of wood move. And so they have to get their balance and then they have to go to the next step. And hopefully the video will play and you'll see lots of children doing this that are like 2 or 2.5 that did this at this school. They have a huge sand pit, which is in the top right, and a climbing structure. So there's like this little climbing wall that's a half circle. And so children can climb up onto that climbing wall that's probably at the most, at its highest point, 3 feet off the ground. And then they can jump off and go into the sand pit. Up in that top or right-hand corner, over at the top right is a water feature. Every China kindergarten has a water feature. Sometimes they're koi ponds. Sometimes, in this case, this is 6 inches of water. And there are bamboo ladders that are going across this water feature. And so if you're 2 or 2.5 and you're not really sure of what you're doing, you're crawling across that bamboo ladder to get to the other side of the water feature. But when you're 4 and you've been doing this a lot, I saw several 4-year-olds just run as fast as they could and use the bamboo ladder pieces to get from one side to the other at a full run. It was fascinating. And so there's lots of components of that risky stuff that we just talked about, especially height, right? And that agility that they need and to be able to know where their body is in space and to be able to hit those rungs on that bamboo ladder that is laying across the water feature. The bottom is just another piece, and hopefully the video will play for you, but this is a balance beam that is not straight. So it's in a zigzag pattern and there are different heights to it. So children are walking, then they're stepping down and they're having to go at angles since it's in a zigzag pattern. Then they have a landing. Then they have another one of these wood slats that are independently there that they have to physically balance and walk across. Then they have straight balance beams, and then they have a tunnel that they climb through. And so children were just moving around this piece of equipment. So I want you to think of how you could do some of these things on your playground. So here is the video, I hope, that will play. Oh no, go back. Let's see if it'll play. It played when I did it in the PowerPoint, but I'm not seeing where to play it. But here's these little ones. So these are 2.5 and 3-year-olds. And so in this photo, it's that big piece of equipment I just showed you with the tunnel and the zigzag balance beams and the platforms, and then the movable little wooden planks. And so these little munchkins are navigating those slats that are independent, that move when they step on them. Oh, I wish the video had played. I'm sorry. So this is playground. So the other thing that I've noticed, though we're getting better in the US, the other thing that I've noticed is there are risky play opportunities in every other country. And if you go on to like Google Images and you do risky playgrounds across the world, and you will see many of these pictures and even more. And so I want us to recognize that other countries value children taking risk, and we seem to want to prevent it because we're afraid. So the top one is a boat that's at an angle on a concrete slab. And so when children climb on this boat, they have to get their balance because the boat is not, flat and straight. And then they have to climb up to the top of the tower, and then they go down a slide. It's risky, right? You're being challenged physically, but there's really not a hazard there. The bottom left is a tire playground in Tokyo. And so this is just filled with tires that in some cases are stacked up 2 stories high. And children climb up those tires to get to the top of the dragon, which is the 2-story high feature. But there are all sorts of opportunities for children to have risk as they're climbing and manipulating and going through these tires. On the right is in Midtown New York. So this is a slide structure, but it has a peak at the top where children can climb up onto a circle platform at the top and then slide down like a chute slide, or they can climb upstairs, go up a tall set of steps, and have a huge slide down. And they have 2 slides that are parallel so they can race and see who can get down first. This is back to Dalian. You might have seen this in the slide with the water feature. This is to the left of the water feature. So this top left one is a rope ladder that is in a lattice. So there's different places for children to grip and be able to go up. And then they have to climb through a tire that has been secured at the top of where the rope ladder is. And then they can run down this like slope that is, so it's like an angle slope that goes up, has a platform, and an angle slope that goes down. And the bottom left is like a obstacle course that they have done. So they have all sorts of features that they're having to go over in this obstacle course. And again, this is a child choice, but the teachers have planned to incorporate risk into the playground. And so they have to navigate all of these different balance beams and structures that they have to climb over. And at the end, there's a trampoline for them to jump on. On the right is, I'm sure this is Little Tikes, looks just like a Little Tikes structure. But again, it has risk involved, right? Because they either have to climb up the steps and go over each of these half circles of heights to get to the other side, or they have to climb up the ramp and figure out a way to get across each of those half circles that are different heights. And so another opportunity to practice risk. They do have the soft surfaces underneath there. So, if they fell, and probably they would fall 3 feet if they fell at all. That is as high as they are, but is a significant risk for young children. Then they have these paths where they have directional signs where they bounce balls. So they have basketballs and bouncy balls. And there was a 4-year-old there that dribbled. I have a video of this 4-year-old dribbling for 3.5 minutes with a basketball. And he would switch hands. His motor control of his body was absolutely amazing. This is the Gathering Place in Oklahoma. And so the Gathering Place is this open park where I'm hoping to have an IPA USA conference in 2027, where there are structures that promote risky play. So in this, you have very tall, very, very tall structures that look like birds. And there's two of them, and there's a closed tunnel slide. And I would say these birds are probably 2 or 2.5 stories tall. And children have to climb up ladders or go up different levels of steps to get to the slides before they can come down. They also have, if you look in the back on the left, they have one of those swings that children can jump on and swing around without hurting themselves. So it's wide enough apart. And then there are many other risky play pieces of equipment here. There's a huge climbing structure over here on the far right that they can climb up. So this is in Oklahoma. So people are doing this every day. Have they observed to make sure that it's not a hazard? Yes. So when we think about play deprivation, just as Stuart Brown was telling us, Peter Gray tells us that the harmful consequences of play deprivation in our culture today is evidenced over the past 60 years because we've witnessed a continuous, gradual, but ultimately dramatic decline in children's opportunities to play freely without adult control, and especially in their opportunities to play in risky ways. So over the same 60 years, so Peter Gray and Free to Learn has provided all this research for you. We've also witnessed a continuous, gradual, but ultimately dramatic increase in all sorts of childhood mental disorders, especially emotional disorders. So over on the right, you have an image of a child navigating tires that have just been planted, buried partially in the ground. And this child is navigating, moving from one tire, stepping over to another distance. It's height for a child that small. It's risky, and they're having to use really wonderful skills. So again, when we're thinking about balancing the difference between hazards and risks, and that's what your photo is showing you, is this sort of seesaw that has hazards on one side and risks on the other. You really want to say, okay, what is the benefit of providing opportunities for acceptable risk for you in an early care and education classroom and playground? And then what are the dangers of providing those opportunities? And I promise you the risks will outweigh the hazards. So I want you to think of it from a different perspective, thinking of those 16 types of play, thinking of the words of Peter Gray and Stuart Brown, and why not having opportunities for risk and child-initiated play is a problem. So when Peter Pizzolongo is fabulous, and I've given you the source of where you can find his article, but he says risk is essential in childhood, and he tells us why. Encounters with certain types of risks are said to help children learn how to manage those risks. Oh, I climbed too high. I have this internal warning system that's telling me I've climbed too high, so I better get down. But if they don't have opportunities to climb or do other risky things, their body doesn't have that early warning system for them. Such arguments, he says, underpin many safety education initiatives which teach children practical skills that help them to protect themselves, such as swimming, cycling, or road safety. Well, risky play also helps them learn how to manage hazards. He also says most children have an appetite for risk-taking, and if not fed, somehow that will lead them to seek out situations in which they may be exposed to greater risks. We see this from children who were really told what to do, where to go, how long to stay there, either at home or at school. And when they get to college and they have some freedom, make poor decisions. Some of you may have done that. So think about what the dangers are, the long-term effects of not giving children opportunities to take risks. And then risk is needed for development. It builds character traits such as being adventurous and having an entrepreneurial mindset. It builds resilience and self-reliance. Overcoming challenging situations is an essential part of living a meaningful and satisfying life. And if you're thinking about who you are as a person, what risks have you taken in your profession? What risks have you taken in a new job? So all of those risks that you experience and all that learning that you get when you're young will sort of manifest itself as you get older, that lets you do something that maybe people wouldn't choose to do. So this picture goes back to those 16 types of play. So there's this climbing structure with poles that children in the top left are balancing on and climbing up on. In the middle picture, anyone can do this on their playground. There's plenty of lumber out there when they cut down trees because they've fallen in a storm or something. I would stop on the side of the road when people had lots of wood out there, and I would pick it up and put it in my trunk, take it back to my playground, and we would bury them. Different heights of those logs in the ground, different distance between each one. All of those things give children opportunities to take a risk in a safe way. Rope ladders that go up a hill, it's that lattice is in like the third picture from the left. And then the one on the far right is one that is on a playground in the US. And it is just different logs that have been bolted together so they don't move, but children are able to navigate and climb all over them. And so it goes back to, what opportunities are you providing for those 16 types of play? So in the back to American Academy of Pediatrics, which says rough and tumble play, which is akin to the play seen in animals. Anybody who's had puppies or kittens will have seen this. Enable children to take risks in a relatively safe environment, which fosters the acquisition of skills needed for communication, negotiation, and emotional balance, and encourages the development of emotional intelligence. It enables risk-taking and encourages the development of empathy, because children are guided not to inflict harm on others. And that rough and tumble play is a perfect opportunity for children to be able to pick up on nonverbal cues with an adult there that's helping them get those skills. This isn't something children are born with. So the next two slides will give you, make you hyperventilate. These are playgrounds in New York from the 1900s, and how far we have gone from what our current playgrounds look like. So risky or challenging is what I'm saying. So this is a playground piece of equipment that has lots of like ladders that are probably a story and a half or 2 stories tall. And up at the very top, there are big, huge poles that children can walk across or navigate their way across. There are all sorts of heights and structures. So this is a huge piece of equipment. If you're not able to view it, that has, I don't know, there's probably 25 children on it, and all of them are mostly at the top of this 2.5 story piece of equipment. It's a little scary for some of us. Even I would go, and there's dirt underneath them. There's no, safety surfaces. This one are, remember when you used to swing on the playground and you used to go as high as you possibly could go, and then you jump off? before they took swings off of playgrounds because they were afraid children were going to hurt themselves. Imagine what you were learning, where you were in space, how high you could go, what the distance was that you felt comfortable jumping. That's on the left side of the screen as there are two children swinging at a time on one swing, going as high as they can. And then on the right are, again, probably a story and a half tall structure that has monkey bars and ladders that go up to a peak and down to the ground, where children are navigating different heights and different types of challenges. This one is one of those, this is like total metal. It's like a big swing, but there's, I don't know, 15 children on it. And it's almost like they're like straddling this big piece of equipment, and they're swinging as high as they can possibly swing. And on the far left is a child who is the swinger, and she is jumping up and getting the swing and pushing it down to make it go higher. And so this is a huge piece of metal that they're using for this playground structure. So I want you to be thinking, what is acceptable risk for you? I don't need you to, do a 2-story thing. I need you to be thinking, what did I see in this presentation that I might be willing to try? And, one of the easiest things is why can't children go up the slide on Tuesdays and Thursdays and down the slide on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, or the other way? Because children use different muscles and different skills going up a slide than they do going down a slide. So be thinking about what is acceptable to you. And so Risky Play by Lisa Latimer, who runs a wonderful school that is play-based in California. Risky play is incredibly important, as that's where children learn what their bodies are capable of. And it helps them build awareness of body position and balance, which then helps them with coordination and where their body is in relationship to their surroundings. It also helps with self-regulation and self-confidence as well, which then leads to better academics. Children who don't take risks are afraid to take risks when it comes to reading or trying a math problem. And so, again, I want you to be thinking about the future of not allowing children to take risks. So on the right is a climbing structure that is all tires that have been placed on this wooden platform that's at a pretty high angle. And children are climbing up the tires to get to the top. So how does being risk averse, so that's when this is your stuff, not children's stuff, harm development? And so risk averse attitudes is what sociologist Frank Ferruti calls a culture of fear, a generalized and insidious anxiety about safety that has found expression in fears for children, even though they are statistically safer than at any point in human history. And a wonderful book is Tim Gill's No Fear. And I encourage all of you to read it, which really helps you understand risk. So I introduced earlier the elements of forest schools that promote risky play. So in forest schools or nature preschools, children are outside all day, regardless of the weather, or they're outside for a large portion of the day. And I'll show you some. You don't have to do it 5 days a week. I can show you some alternatives in a minute. Children explore the environment without teacher interference. Recognition that nature is the teacher from the educator's point of view. Educators do not lead. They follow children's interests and respond to them. They see children as capable and competent explorers. Families are always welcome and included, and children have natural boundaries. There are no fences. So children recognize, oh, we can't go there because we have to have a teacher to go there. So there are lots of options to get children out in nature. You can stay outside all day in whatever weather. And I just visited 5 programs in Portland, Oregon, 5 outdoor preschool programs where children were outside in the rain, in the snow, in the sleet. If you're in Finland or Sweden, they say it's never too cold. It's that you don't have the proper equipment to keep you warm. And they showed us many ways that they kept children warm when it got cold in Portland. Or you regularly spend 1 or more days outside during the week, and there is no structure. Children are able to explore. Sometimes in a different kind of continuum, option 1 is there's no or limited time in a fenced outdoor space with typical equipment and artificial surfaces. So that's not the best. We'd rather them be out in nature where they can not be in such a sort of a curated space that we think is safer, but which prevents them from being in nature and getting the benefits of nature. It can be a controlled, naturalized and fenced outdoor play space with lots of loose parts. Loose parts are Google image loose parts, and you will come up with an assortment of things. They are just stuff, right? Option 3 is the program is located in a natural environment with no fences. So children are outside in the forest. They're outside in a park with no fences because they need to learn responsibility of staying where they should be. So as advocates for children's play, both risky and versus hazardous and child-initiated play, you have to ask yourself, what's our role? How can directors increase acceptable risk thinking in their teachers? How can communities confront risk-averse thinking? How can parents confront risk-averse thinking? Where do we start? And what are the 3 things you can do? So in this picture, you would determine, and this is a half circle climber that almost looks like monkey bars, but it's in a half circle. And so you would need to ask yourself, is this risky or is this hazardous? It's probably 4.5 or 5 feet at its highest point off the ground, but children are climbing on it, and they're climbing up over the half circle and climbing down. Risky or hazardous? In Dalian, I'm hoping this will play, but I don't think it's going to. In Dalian, they had 2 ropes parallel. So what you're seeing in this image is 2 parallel ropes that are tied to trees. And one of the teachers in the purple is sort of stabilizing the top rope. And so underneath is a soft, spongy material. And so children grab onto the top of the rope and they put their feet on the bottom of the rope, and then the rope starts swinging, right? Because they have some weight on it. And they navigate their way, and the bottom rope is probably 6 to 8 inches off the ground. But when they put their weight on it, then they're maybe 3 or 4 inches off the ground. And they're having to navigate, learning where their body is in space and getting their balance as they move across those 2 parallel ropes. And lots of kids can't wait to do it. They did it over and over again when I was there. This is an obstacle course where, and again, I wish the video would play, but it's not going to, an obstacle course. And so you have children with small hula hoops in the back, and the hula hoops are sort of in a flat on the ground, but in different locations and different distances apart. And then you have soft mats and an A-frame climber. And so there's a teacher by the climber. There's a teacher in the back where the children are going through the small hula hoops, and children are climbing up and jumping off without a teacher holding them unless the teacher needs to be there. And these children were so competent. They would climb up that A-frame ladder on one side, get up on top of the platform, they would balance themselves, and they would leap off onto the soft cushiony material on the other side. And they did it over and over and over again. It was beautiful to watch. In Sweden, the picture at the top left is a piece of playground equipment that is probably 3 stories tall at its highest point, with a tunnel slide that curves and goes down. There's smaller slides for smaller children. There's lots of risk that is available in this piece of equipment. But in Philadelphia, which is where I live near, we have Smith Memorial Playground, and you can go on to the Smith Memorial Playground site and see all of their risk that they have put onto this playground. So the bottom of this one is soft surfacing underneath, so that's spongy stuff. But there are nets, and all the nets are connected to these tall poles, and children have to navigate the holes in the nets to get to where they want to go. It is an amazing, risky play. So I think what we have to do is switch our thinking in changing the paradigm from keeping children safe, because if we that's not going to happen, because if we wrap them in cotton, they're not going to learn where their body is in space, to adding more risk-taking opportunities. And so I'm going to tell you about a story in Richmond Avenue Primary and Nursery School. So 4 years ago, the teachers at this primary and nursery school looked critically around their campus and set about, as one of them put it, bringing in risk. And so out went all the plastic playhouses, and in came what they described as the dicey stuff: stacks of 2x4s, crates, and loose bricks. The schoolyard got a mud pit, a tire swing, log stumps that were buried, workbenches with hammers and saws. We thought, how can we bring that element of risk into the everyday environment? Who manages the early learning program at this school? This school is in Southeast Britain, and the director is Liam Morris. So we were looking at, okay, so we've got a sand pit. What can we add to the sand pit to make it more risky? And now Miss Morrison says proudly, we have fires, we use knives and saws and different tools, all used under adult supervision with safety glasses and whatever else makes you feel better. Indoors, they have scissors and sharp-edged tape dispensers, and they normally only cut themselves once, she says, on the tape dispenser until they figure out how to use their body to not cut themselves. And listen, every child needs to fall. Every child does. They need to fall, they need to skin their knees, because they learn from that. And they learn that, oh, when I slide on the pea gravel that is on the sidewalk, it hurts. And so I don't want to do that anymore. And so they learn, instead of us saying, oh, don't run because you might fall. There's a huge difference between the child learning, oh, the teacher says I can't run, right? Or, oh, I fell and I skinned my knee and that hurt, so I want to be more careful next time. Total difference. And so acceptable risks are increasingly cast by experts as an experience that is essential to childhood development, useful in building their resilience and grit. So as advocates for play, what is our role? And these are the things that we just went through. How can directors increase acceptable risk? How can communities confront risk-averse thinking? How can parents confront risk-averse thinking? Where do we start? And for your own planning, what are 3 things you can do? So in this picture, you have a rubber mat that is secured to 2 poles that are a distance apart, and children are balancing as this rubber mat is swinging back and forth, trying to keep their balance. On the slide on the right, you have even a young toddler climbing up on a rock. Toddlers love to climb. It's internally driven. You have to give them something they can climb on. And so think about what are 3 things you could do. This is a slide, 2 slides, parallel slides that are put into a hill. And so it's not a climbing structure. The hill becomes where the slides go down in the hill. And there are rocks that children can climb to get to the top, and then they can slide down on this hill. This is a piece, this is a back to Dalian, where there's this half circle that again is like monkey bars, only in a half circle, that a child is having to navigate on an obstacle course. And the baskets on the back, this was hysterical. You know those things that people pick up trash with so they don't have to bend over and pick up trash? Well, they had child-sized ones. And so they have these little plastic waste baskets on the back that's like a backpack. So they have little pieces of yarn through, and the children put them on their back like they would a backpack. And on the ground are spongy balls that they can pick up with those trash collecting tools, and then they throw them into the basket that's on their back. It was hysterical. Again, risky. Think about the spatial awareness they have to get the ball that's in that tool into their basket. So what are the barriers that are in place for you to incorporate acceptable risk? What's possible? Where can you start? Well, we have to overcome that risk aversion. Bev Boss taught us that creating the illusion of risk could be a first step for you. Supervising without interfering with acceptable risk is important, so you have to sort of keep yourself in check. Adding loose parts to provide risky play, providing a minimum of an hour in the morning and afternoon for outdoor play, and throughout the day, blocking off at least 4 hours, and I always try to do more than that, of child-initiated play throughout the day so that they are guiding their own learning. So one of the things that one of my roles, which is crazy, is the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play. And we're the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. So there are like 24 countries that are determined to promote the child's right to play. So you can find me at that email, IPAUSA2019user@gmail.com. You can learn more about us there. We're having a conference in September that you would find if you went to our website at IPAUSA.org, and you are welcome to come. It is 93 sessions all about play and tours to go to. So these are all references that you can go to, how to talk to parents about the importance of risky play. So there's ways to help convince parents that risky play is integral to healthy development. Then there's an article on the importance of risky play in early childhood. And then there's an article on risky play, why children love it and need it. Tips from the Center for Disease Control. Time for Play is a source that I've given you. Playworks.org is another website that promotes play. And the CDC Healthy Schools Physical Activity and Recess, if you need to advocate for any child to have recess during school. Those references are all available for you. There's our conference, the 25th through the 28th in Greenville, and you can find all that information and even more about us by visiting IPAUSA.org. Thanks so much for your time.
Dr. Lawrence, that was amazing. We hope you will all find another session. Have a great day.